Hey everybody, I am back wrapping up January month with not an animated film, but I figured like while I was going through films on Disney Plus to do reviews on, Pirates of the Caribbean came up, and it's like, you know what? I could have sworn I did like a review for the first Pirates of the Caribbean film, but it turns out I didn't. And I figured, why the hell not? Let's put on the list. I want to talk about the first Pirates film. At a later date, I will eventually cover the, at least some point in the future, I should say, cover the rest of the Pirates film. But I want to cover, honestly, the best one out of the entire franchise. Because honestly, I was about to say, it turned out, the franchise turned out like the Fast and Furious films did. But honestly, despite the Pirates films issues, they still remain consistent compared to the Fast and Furious films, where they kind of just went off the rails and people just accepted whatever, which I am one of the few who do not, because I stopped after 5 because they stopped being about heist films with cars. Now they just, MCU with cars, if that makes any sense. Where it's just like, defies all kinds of laws of physics and just all about coronas and family and just flying into space with cars and like kicking missiles out of the car. It's nonsense. And it's like, I can't get with it, especially after the death of Paul Walker. I really stopped giving a crap about the franchise after that point, because I think he was the soul and the glue that held this entire thing together in the first place. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. The Pirates films, they remain consistent, but the quality is just like goes less and less. Well, I won't say quality. You know what I'm saying? It's just like in terms of the quality of the writing, at the very least, has been dipping. Not dramatically, in my opinion, but definitely in some increments where it's just like hard to not notice. So it's just, God, they should have stopped after the third or fourth film. I'm pretty sure the first 4 films still had like the original cast until they just switched over to just all about Johnny Depp, which arguably he was the main draw to all these films in the first place. But honestly, kudos to Johnny Depp, because this movie is based off the attraction rides at Disneyland, and hats off to them. They was very creative in making like an entire saga out of one little attraction. But it was Johnny Depp who brought this original character to life and made it a iconic character forever. I argue he's right up there with something like Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands in terms of iconic, characters that people will remember forever. His performance, even though because it's funny, he took inspiration off of the rock star Keith Richards, which in the later films, I think by the third film, he had Keith Richards had like a cameo as Jack's dad. Spoiler alert. And it's like, oh wow, it's like the very inspiration Johnny took to help build his character. They actually got the rock star to come in at least twice, I think, in like a cameo role as Jack's father. And they got some other rock star or somebody to play his uncle. I forgot who that was. Who the heck they had like this? Uh, hmm. Sorry, this is gonna bother me if I don't. Cause God, who was that person that had to be his uncle? Had to be his uncle. Huh? Let me look this up. This is gonna bother me. Hmm. Jack. Mm, Uncle Jack. Paul McCartney. Uh, yeah, that was Paul McCartney. Which, obviously, yeah, another rock star. So you got like two rock stars playing Jack's family members, his uncle and his dad. So I thought that was pretty fun. Uh, anyway, uh, yeah, this, you know, yeah, this character is an amazing, and honestly, ever since this first movie, and I'm pretty sure it was at the peak during the trilogy, the first trilogy, where every Halloween everybody's coming to dressed up as Jack Sparrow. It's like, but definitely during the year when, or at least the year following, when Curse of the Black Pearl came out, everybody's dressed as Jack Sparrow. It was like, men, women, children. It was like, just like when last year when Beetlejuice came out, there was already enough people, going as Beetlejuice, but it just wasn't a crazy amount. But when a movie comes out and a character is, I guess, insanely popular, here comes all the costumes. But this character is amazing. There was one Halloween many years ago I went dressed as a pirate, not Jack Sparrow, because I don't know if I can fit the look of it per se, but I do like pirates, and as like during the golden age of piracy, which this movie really heightened up at least the franchise really kept like that interest and love for golden age of piracy. You even got like shows like Black Sails coming out at some point, where it just carried on that love, because the golden age of piracy didn't last all too long. You kind of think, given the title Golden Age of Piracy, you would think it would have been like, I don't know, a handful of years, or at least a decade. But no, it's only been like a couple of years at most of during the whole Golden Age of Piracy. But in terms of like warfare, they was very good, because most of them, at least definitely in the early age during the Golden Age of Piracy really kicked off, there was like former naval men who pretty much like was out of work, so they just kind of like commandeered ships, went on to pillage, plunder, steal, and distribute the riches among the crew. But they were good at their jobs. They weren't just rowmen that just found a boat and just became pirates all of a sudden. No, they actually were skilled warriors of their time. So yeah, and it was a lot. And then the video game Assassin's Creed Black Flag, another thing in pop culture that really heightens, because it's one of the many people who love the Assassin's Creed franchise all acknowledge that Black Flag is honestly the best Assassin's Creed game out of the entire franchise, which took the piracy to new heights. So yeah, but in all honesty, we owe a lot to the Pirates of the Caribbean films for that renewal of that love of that particular part of our history. Anyway, on to the movie. So we see that the movie opens with this little girl who will be eventually Elizabeth Swann, played by Keira Knightley, but almost forgot. This movie was directed by Gore Verbinski, and obviously stars Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow, Jeffrey Rush as Captain Barbossa, Orlando Bloom as Will Turner, Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Swann, Jack Davenport as Norrington, a naval officer, Kevin R. McNally as Josme Gibbs. We got Zoe Saldana as Anna Maria. Jonathan Pryce as Governor Weatherby Swann, the father of Elizabeth. Trevor Atney plays as Kohler, a member of Barbossa's crew. David Bailey as Cotton, a member of Jack's crew. So anyway, so we open with young Elizabeth Swann, who sings the whole pirate song, yo ho, pirate's life for me. Those sea shanties, pretty much. Which, kudos, they kind of like kept that alive after all these years. I mean, honestly, look up those sea shanties, those old pirate songs. They're actually pretty decent. But we see like a younger Gibbs, who is like the first mate on this ship, and he make a remark to the young girl for singing songs about pirates, because you don't want to invite bad omens by, it's pretty much like a jinx or something to bring, trying to entice pirates to us by singing their little sea shanties. He also make a comment about women should not be on board in ships because it's bad luck. Now, on the surface, you might view it as a very sexist thing. Now, not going to deny it's very sexist, but if you look on the historical aspects of it, it's it's very accurate. Mostly because that back in the day, especially during the golden days of piracy, it was bad luck to have women on board on ships. Mostly because, not because of anything sinister or whatever have you, or it being just plain old sexist. I'm pretty sure there's some aspect or some component to that, but mostly it's because that while on ships, they're mostly male crews for the most part. There are rare instances where there were women on pirate ships or just ships in general, especially if they're working on ships. That's very rare. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but having women on the pirate ships is bad luck, given, or just ships, is bad luck because while the crewmen were working on the ships, because lots of ins and outs of maintaining a ship to keep it moving, you don't want to invite distractions where the crew cannot do their job properly, because they was worried about distractions. If they have a female on board, men are probably too focused on that, given the fact they're at sea for long periods of times. They get a little restless, and because of that they can't focus. So that's why they deemed it as bad luck, because I'm pretty sure people early on got distracted. Accidents tend to happen. Some people might have gotten killed because somebody didn't tie a rope properly or wasn't minding where they're driving the ship or something like that and crash. Then it kind of sprang into like a supernatural tale, like, oh, it's a jinx or something to have women on board. So that had been the case up until a certain period, not exactly know when. It's probably maybe some point in like the in the 1930s ish or something like that. Very early on in the 1900s, when that idea started to change a bit, especially when women starting to be able to show some initiative and skill on ships, where that kind of thinking has completely changed altogether. But during this period of time, that was very accurate for what Gibbs had, made that statement about. It was very accurate at the time. Thought I'd point that out. Just a little historical fact. Anyway, so young Elizabeth took notice that a young boy was, laying on a piece of wood adrift from a destroyed ship. They rescued the boy. She took notice of a medallion with kind of like a Jolly Roger skull on it. Pretty much, not like an actual Jolly Roger, but it's just a skull in it. And she took notice because she is such a fangirl of pirates. Because she like, oh my God, it would be so awesome to meet a pirate and everything like that. Which, kudos to the movie, kind of set that up to her later arc in the film. But she took notice, took the medallion, so the other crew wouldn't label him as a child of a pirate or something, and because piracy was highly illegal, more often pirates are immediately brought to trial and subsequently hanged for piracy. They didn't either you give that up or you're hanged. It was one of the two. Or you might be caged, but the likelihood of you getting out, who knows what the rules were. But primarily, pirates were normally hanged if they weren't killed in battles, ship battles. So she took that, and so they brought the boy back with them to Port Royal, where he, who will know to be as Will Turner, has been sent to live with a blacksmith, where he learned the skills as a blacksmith. Created a lot of blades for a lot of the naval officers in Port Royal. So years down the line, we see like a more grown-up Will and Elizabeth, who obviously has some kind of like a thing for each other. But honestly, I don't want to say the chemistry is not there, but I'm just not feeling it. I don't think many people really feel like they had better chemistry than Bella Swan, another Swan, and the Twilight guy. I gotta give Will and Elizabeth that they have better chemistry than those guys, but that's not saying much. But honestly, I don't think many people really cared for this relationship. Matter of fact, most people did not really care for Will and Elizabeth, to be frank, because Jack Sparrow pretty much stole the show. But they have their moments. Honestly, I just want to put it up while I'm talking about Will and Elizabeth right now. For me personally, I think this movie, The Black Pearl, is the only film that I actually liked Elizabeth in. Proceeding in the subsequent films, she gotten less and less interesting and more kind of annoying to me personally, because I think because this movie gotten so successful, there wasn't really any plans for any type of sequel, let alone a franchise. But because it made so much bank, like insane amount of money, they, I guess studios, Disney, they, try to get these people like back together. Like, okay, we got a golden goose on our hands. Quickly give us a script. So they decided to make, a trilogy, but then eventually became a saga, which wrapped up, a handful of years ago at this point. But it definitely ran that, this franchise into the ground. Let's be honest. But she got progressively kind of bland at best to me as the franchise went on with her character, which I admit it was nice to see her, in the last film as like a cameo. It's just so like, it all, ends the way it began kind of situation. Same with Will Turner. But speaking on Will, polar opposite to Elizabeth, Will Turner got progressively more interesting as things went on with his character. He is the least interesting in this film to me, but only slightly more than Elizabeth's father. Where it seems like he's just, there. Not saying like he doesn't have stuff to do, but it's just like he's like the pseudo MacGuffin. We'll get as to why soon, but once they come up with once they had to formulate a plan to do with something to do with these characters, he has like a more impressive arc that they worked on with this character. Well, now I'm thinking about it, I guess they did give Elizabeth somewhat of an arc where she's started out admiring pirates, but doesn't have the subsequent skills to fight or whatever. But she had her wits about her, which there is something. But it seemed, not the way it ended, because she kind of went and circled back to after she had her misadventure as like a pirate, because she did achieve a goal where she get to live a life of a pirate, essentially a pirate queen. She kind of took over like another pirate's crew in like the third or fourth film. I'm pretty sure it was the third film. So yeah, they all kind of blend together. I'm pretty sure it's either the third or the fourth film where she kind of lived that life that she always admired. So they kind of gave her like a decent of an arc. But then once that kind of, when she got pregnant, spoilers again, she got pregnant, it's kind of like live, go back to an, like a ordinary-ish life. So yeah, I mean, she had like a decent arc, but honestly, I think Will's was slightly more interesting. But Once again, Jack Sparrow is probably like honestly the more interesting one. That's the only reason that people keep coming back to these films, which is like unprecedented in most films outside of other franchises, that's not DC or Marvel related. Hell, even Star Wars doesn't get this treatment. People come back to Star Wars for the most part, not in recent years, but people usually come back for Star Wars not because of just Luke Skywalker. It's like at least a handful of characters that are equally as interesting, nearly as interesting as Luke Skywalker. But I'm just talking about like a headliner. Jack Sparrow is the headliner, and the only reason we come to see these films in the first place. Anyway, getting back to the thing. So we see these two are smitten with each other, and while Elizabeth gets prepared with this stupid corset, which people is probably the only, if people remember Elizabeth at all about this film, off the top of their head, I'm pretty sure they'll remember the whole corset situation. That's her name to fame, honestly. Anything else is like, you got to take a minute to drag out through their memories. The corset is probably the one thing, because she kept, because women of that time had to wear these very tight corsets to kind of, give them like, a very thin look. But they tied it too tight where it's like constricted her breathing, so she kind of passes out, into the waters. Don't know why they had this whole ceremony near like a castle-like area by the water, but whatever. But before we get to that, we get like one of the best introductions to a character in the film. Honestly, the only thing that's probably better, in my opinion, would be Iron Man's introduction in Iron Man 2, where he's like, dive bombing in his suit out of an airplane, landing into this expo on stage. Honestly, that is probably one of my, at least personally, like a great introduction to a character in a film. Really good. But yeah, Jack Sparrow is up there too. So it's just his sinking little mini ship as he's like, standing on the mast as it's drifting further into the water, and he just steps onto the deck. So as he's trying to enter Port Royal, he gets accosted by some naval officers, and he sees that Elizabeth falls in the water. Since the other two officers, don't know how to swim, apparently, he jumps and saves the girl and opens the corset just to allow her to breathe and spit out that the salt water. Norton notices him as a pirate, orders his arrest immediately. I mean, like, I guess because pirates gets locked up on sight, apparently, because it's like, due process is like iffy at best around this time. But he makes his escape and runs into a blacksmith shop, and that's where he gets confronted by Turner. And honestly, a great sword fight scene, really good, where you see like Depp and Bloom. You see the choreography displayed very well. And matter of fact, the cinematography, the atmosphere, like the lack of CGI. They use the CGI for one thing, which is obviously the zombies. We'll get to that soon, but they spent their budget really well on this. And it's like, man, I miss practical effects. Just, actual, locations, none of that green screen BS. If they have it, I'm pretty sure it's, used very little. But they enter a sword fight, and we see that Jack cheats, and of course Turner is a little green. He pretty much was raised here in his world. All he's known, he's kind of, I want to say, lived a pampered lifestyle. He was a blacksmith, so he knows how to use a sword, but he always fought with honor. But he never was confronted by a pirate who had no qualms with cheating in order to pull out a win. But he ends up getting knocked out thanks to Turner's boss, who was drunk on the job in the first place. And so Jack is immediately locked up. But then later that night, because Elizabeth was still wearing that medallion, which she never bothered to get back to Will at no point, when she fell in the water, as soon as that water touched that medallion, let off this pulse, which signaled these other pirates being led by Captain Barbossa, who arrive in Port Royal, pretty much causing fear, panic, destruction, trying to find this medallion because they desperately need it. And they trying to find who has it in their possession, which leads them to Elizabeth, who enacts the code Parlay. And I'm glad they made one of the crew members made a comment about, because they get annoyed by the overuse of parlay in this film, because they want to do a dirty deed. They want to kill off certain individuals, but as soon as they speak the word parlay, they have to stop. It's like calling time out, and they have to stop by code. There's thing with the pirates code, one of them being parlay. And he made a comment, it's like, God, curse the person who invented the parlay. And Jack made a comment, this is later in the film, but I started bringing it up now, the fact that that'll be the French, which I had to look up. And yes, it was the French who it was I'm not sure which century, but very early on, definitely prior to the golden age of piracy, parlay essentially enacting truce, or at least a temporary truce when things got too hectic, and it's like, okay, we need to have some kind of negotiations or something like that. So I thought, wow, they really made sure that a lot of this stuff is very authentic to the historical period of the time. At least remaining true to that. Also, because I like watching videos of certain historians reacting to scenes from certain films depicting a particular period of time. Pirate historians made a comment about the ship naval battles here, and how fairly accurate. It's not super accurate. No one was legit there to actually confirm how 100% accurate, but it got pretty close given the records and historians whose job it is to look this up and do research and everything like that. Given the naval battles, from what we've seen in the pirates films, have been fairly accurate in terms of the naval battles, and the fact of how dangerous they are, because it's you got cannonballs firing so close to your own ship, and even if you don't get hit by said cannonball, it crashing into your thick wooden ship, causing tons of shrapnel that will cause severe damage. It's very dangerous to be on a ship, especially a pirate ship that will be known to get into ship battles more often than other ships. But it was insane. It was when you think about it, but I just thought to bring it up. But anyway, she enacted parlay. So they're forced to bring her along to meet with the captain in order to get them to stop their raiding of the town and hurting innocent people. And once Elizabeth meets with Barbossa, they notice she's, possesses the medallion. They ask her name. She says Elizabeth Turner. So they are led to assume that she must be the daughter of Bootstrap Bill, whose last name is Turner, who's supposed to be like a revered pirate. So they decide not to harm her and not do any further harm to Port Royal. So they leave with her, and to Will's dismay, that there's no expedient. There's no expedience with the naval guard, and the fact that like they don't know where they're headed at all. So just going off without a legit plan is dangerous. But Will, who's in love with Elizabeth, is forced to go to Jack. And Jack is keenly aware of the Black Pearl, which Barbossa and his crew was riding in, because he wants, and that is Jack's driving motivation, is getting his ship back. Because he was the previous captain of the Black Pearl, but those crew members, Barbossa included, who was his first mate, caused a mutiny, left him to on an island to die. But there's rumors and crazy stories about how Jack escaped that island with only one pistol and a lone bullet inside that people expect him to use on himself if he starts to worry about starvation and thirst. But he managed to get off the island, still with that one bullet meant for Barbossa, for stealing his ship and leaving him to die. So he's saving that, which is like a nice little, because they don't often do this in films and TV lately, but the fact that they set up something and pay it off in like a cohesive, thoughtful way. So Turner makes a deal with Sparrow, so he'll let him out if he helps him track down the Black Pearl and to save Elizabeth, since he knows where the ship's gonna be. He has no problem working with him, but they obviously need a crew. They can't just do this on their own. So once they make their escape, they hijack a ship, which is kind of odd, where there's only two, and the people on there, maybe they don't have weapons on hand, but it's still like some level of officer. I'm not sure. It seems like they're officers. Don't know why they don't have, muskets or anything like that on hand. But the fact that these guys are only two, you have at most 20, let's lowball it to be 20. It's still more you than there are them. Sure, they have cutlasses, but it's like they can't come at you. It's still weird. There's a lot of stuff in this film and a lot of the Pirates franchise where Jack kind of lucks out of stuff that seem crazy to be lucked out of, and people are listening to this fool where they couldn't just like off him, get it done with. Don't know why they. I know it's one of those things in films that kind of makes zero sense to listen to a particular character because he's the main character. I was like, why? Like these dudes always got some kind of slick talk or whatever. Don't know why you even bother. whatever. He managed to get out of stuff that feasibly he shouldn't. Now, this is one of those things where Jack Sparrow, I won't say he's completely, but he shows mannerisms, certain mannerisms of a Gary Stu, where people, just like you got like a Mary Stu, there are such things as a Gary Stu. Jack Sparrow being, I won't say he's full on Gary Stu because he has some agency and definitely character development, but he has elements of a Gary Stu. In example, getting out of spots just by talking his way out of jams, which for the most, at least half the time, sure, you can buy it. Other half, it's like, come on, why are you even listening to him? You know by this point you shouldn't even be bothered. But whatever. But they managed to get those crewmen off the ship, but because they very close to port, Norrington, get on his personal ship, follows them. Jack and will know that Norrington's ship will easily catch up with theirs, but that was the plan. So they hid away as Norrington's ship eventually catches up, and they start boarding. Don't know why they all board that ship instead of most of them. That was like a stupid thing to do, but they did. So Will and Sparrow swing from the ropes onto Norrington's ship, take control of that since it's faster, and take off with it. Now, as Norrington takes notice, tries to use the ship they're on to get to them, but Jack smartly disables the wheel and messes up all the cannons and everything on board, so they can't fire upon them, let alone follow them. So it kind of gives them kind of like a head start while they try to find Elizabeth and the Black Pearl. Speaking of which, we see Elizabeth, having like a meal with Barbossa, and I kind of like this. It's probably like if I have like a favorite moment with Elizabeth, is this scene where she tried to eat all prim and properly, but Barbossa is like, you don't need to do all that fancy smashy stuff with me. Just go ahead. So she just starts digging into all this food and wine and stuff like that. And the only reason I like it personally, because I like when a girl stops doing the whole prim and proper rabbit eating stuff. It's just like, you're hungry, eat. You're human like the rest of us. If you're hungry, go ahead and eat. It's like stuff. Because personally, it kind of drives me nuts when, like, you see, because I had this feeling ever since high school, when like lunch cafeteria. I don't know why it bugs me, but it just kind of bugs me when a girl has like a big ass hamburger and she kind of takes a piece out of it and like eat it and stuff. And it's like, it's so weird seeing that. Girl, I know you're hungry. Eat. It's fine. No one's judging you. You're hungry. Eat. God. It's like, God, it just bothers me. It's one of those little pet peeves I have. It's nonsense, I know, but I just don't think it's just, I just find it so odd when, most girls do that and they take a piece of like a big ass meal and just, they do that rabbit, I call it rabbit eating, just like take little nibbles and stuff like that. You got a stomach that's bigger than a rabbit. You're hungry, eat. And it's lovely, and she just took a big chunk out of our turkey leg, and I was like, yeah, that's probably like the realest moment I have with Elizabeth. That's why I like it so much. It's like she's like so authentically herself in this moment. Other times it seems so forced or inorganic or try hard in the later films. This is probably the only time I can think of where she's a legit real person. And of course she has her wits about her, which is fine. I like those too. But this moment is like the only time, like, I like this character in this moment. And it's like, man, I wish you kind of carry that for the rest of the, franchise. But that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, that's when she come to realize that these guys are undead because not long after they marooned Jack, they went and searched and found these 889 gold pieces of coin that was used by the Aztecs to bribe Hernan Cortez to stop his slaughtering of their people. So, of course, as we know, Hernan Cortez, being like a greedy monster of the time, accepted it, but the Aztecs put a curse on it. So anybody who tries to steal this will be cursed as like undead beings, essentially. So every time you see them underneath the moonlight, they turn into like walking skeletons. And honestly, I love the way, like I said, like when they use like, the CGI budget, they smartly used it here, because not only we get to see them as they walk into the moonlight, we see them as they truly are, which is undead skeletons, and it looks really good. And even when you see them fighting and like go from shadow to moonlight to shadow to moonlight, and you see how good, you slow it down, it looks phenomenal. Wow, the attention to detail is immaculate, where they make sure that anytime a light is shown, a moonlight is shown on them, even if it's partial, you gotta see them as a skeleton partially. And it's done so well. Like, I love that. And sometimes it'd be so fast because you see them actually fighting sometimes. It's like, a split second, but that split second, you see the detail and it works so well. Which they had to do that, because otherwise it might take some people out of it who are probably hyper vigilant on seeing certain scenes, and the way that things are moved, especially the choreography. People who are really nerds about that kind of stuff will make note of it. So I thought that was very good. So in order to lift the curse, they had to find all the pieces of gold they stolen and spent on. They spent years doing that, so there was only one left. But it was stolen by Will Turner's dad, who we know to be a part of Davy Jones's crew. But we see Will had it as a kid around his neck, so he had it, which doomed the rest of the crew, who I imagine he eventually abandoned. And since we know he's part of an undead crew anyway, so it's like he has really no worry at all personally. So he's not losing. He's already lost. It's like he can't lose twice. So he gives that, I guess, that doubloon to his son after he marooned. And it looks like he was like, what, 10-ish maybe? How do you not remember what happened throughout that time? Because it's not like you're like 5 years old or something like that and you don't have any recollection. You should have some recollection of your father to some extent, because he leads to believe that his father was some kind of good merchant, but Jack has to burst his bubbles like, no, he was a pirate, a good pirate, but a pirate nonetheless, and he had a hard time accepting that, at first. But it's like, how do you not know this? From the beginning of the film, you look like you were old enough to be acutely aware. It's like, I'm willing to buy that if you're like at most 8 years old, at most. But you look like you can easily been like 10 or 11 years old, so you're cognitively aware of who your father, what your father probably have done for a day job, essentially. So it's hard for me to buy you wouldn't know what your father did. Anyway, so since the other pirates could not get that last piece, because for all they know, Bootstrap Bill has lost to the seas, and they're doomed to walk this earth as immortal skeletons, because they can't eat, they can't sleep, they can't satiate those human needs anymore because they're cursed, and they're trying to stop this curse, by finding his last piece, thinking it's the daughter. That's why they took her, but they end up being wrong about the child of Bootstrap. So they take Elizabeth to this grotto where they pulled together, those gold coins that they previously stole and spent on, and finally found them. And thinking like, oh, okay, we got the last one and the child. Since they need the blood of everybody who partook in this theft, it's like, okay, we can't find Bootstrap, but we have his child, which they didn't, the curse didn't specify it needs to be the exact person. You just need the blood of that person. A child would suffice. So they were like, okay, we'll take the blood of her and mix it with the gold piece, because they all had to, put in a bit of their blood as part of this ritual towards getting all these coins back together again, so the curse can be officially lifted from everybody. So after tracking them down, they managed to rescue Elizabeth, but come to realizing Will is the actual child of Bootstrap, Jack ends up getting captured by Barbossa, while Will and Elizabeth try to make the way back. But Jack makes a deal, considering that, hey, I got the actual kid, I know how to get him, I need the Black Pearl, I can help you get this curse lifted. So Jack makes at least 3 or 4 different types of deals in this film. Well, no, I'm kind of jumping ahead, because the Jack and Will managed to get Gibbs and round up a bunch of crew, including Zoe Saldana. I'm sorry, this is gonna call it Zoe Saldana. I'm amazed she didn't. I'm pretty sure she continues on as part of the crew of in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise up to a point. But they end up fighting, trying to retake the pearl. But they get eventually captured, while Barbossa and is abandoning Elizabeth and Sparrow back on the same exact island that they marooned Jack the first time. That's what I'm talking about, the whole slight Gary Stu-isms towards Jack. Why not just bump this guy off immediately? The fact that he got somehow miraculously off the island the first time, you don't want to take any more chances with this guy, but they do, whatever. And Elizabeth soon discovers to how Jack got off. He lucked out. There was people who came by, helping him get passes off the island. But he had also rum and all sorts of things to help him survive that nobody previously realized. So, like I said, he kind of lucked out of situations. Sorry, just shook the computer. While Barbossa managed to get Turner, and on top of that, the medallion, he has the necessary components he needs to go and lift the curse, while Norton still searching for Elizabeth. Knowing that, Elizabeth got an idea, so pretending to get drunk with Jack, which once again kind of sparked something that didn't really need to be there, but tried to just be flirtatious with Jack. I'm sure he has some kind of that bad boy aesthetic that's very attractive to a lot of women, but obviously she doesn't fall for it per se, but she kind of plays on it, gets him drunk to pass out. So therefore that very morning she starts lighting fire to all the food and the wine and rum to light this massive fire where it's hard to missed by any ship, which knowing Norton should be passing by at some point and take notice. But it's just like, I get her plan. Not a bad plan. But keep in mind, lady, you are trapped on an island temporarily. You could have made sure that you still have some rum and food set aside, at least some, to carry you over just in case it might take a while. That's a dumb move. You burnt everything. You could have set some stuff aside just in case. You don't need to have this massive, hellfire going up just to get the signal that you need. But I love like Jack's reaction to this, because it's like he just like definitely want to use that last bullet. Just and he's just like, that entire thing is really funny. But Norton picks him up. Once again, Jack makes a deal with Norton. It's like, oh, like, I know where the pirate's going to be. It's going to be like a feather in your cap. If you manage to capture the largest pirate capture of all time, you will easily get like a promotion and everything like that, blah, blah, blah. So he steers them to the direction where the grotto would be, but he goes, to say he's going to lead them out himself. So, Barbossa and the others astonished, like, you got off the island again? We just left you there. My goodness. But then he makes another deal. And it's like, you see, and Will notices Jack palms a coin, secretly. And knows that Jack must have a plan. And Jack points out to Barbossa, like, I don't think it's a good idea for you to lift the curse right now. Not yet. Because there are naval officers right outside waiting on you to come out fully normal, because he let them know about the whole curse situation. So they're waiting on you so they can take a full advantage of your mortality. So you should handle that first and then come back to lift the curse. So Barbossa and a few crewmates stay behind with Jack and Turner. While on the ship, Elizabeth sneaks off while majority of the crew sneaks on board, starts attacking most of the crew that's there, while on these little rowboats, Norton and the bulk of the crew are waiting outside the grotto, but noticing the catastrophe happening on the boat, so they rush back to help. While a fight brews between Barbossa and a few crew against Turner and Sparrow, and thinking he has the upper hand in stabbing Sparrow. Sparrow is immortal now because he palmed a gold coin, so now he is officially cursed, so he is technically immortal. Even the odds between him and Barbossa for the most part. And then Elizabeth shows up to help Turner take care of these straggler guys. And right before Barbossa shoots Elizabeth, or get a chance to shoot Elizabeth, with swift movement and quick thinking between Turner and Sparrow, offering up his blood on the coin he palmed, Sparrow tosses the coin to Turner, who slices his palm to deliver the last few pieces of gold to the chest to erase the curse. At the same time, Sparrow, using his one last bullet he saved for Barbossa, fires it in his chest, and completely astonished, you hear like Barbossa's like, I feel cold, because, which I gotta note that it was very inconsistent with this, because while immortal, they couldn't feel anything, even though you see certain scenes like early in the first act when they was raiding Port Royal, Elizabeth dumped hot coal on one of the pirates, and he's like fizzing like he's like burning and everything like that, and it's like, I thought you didn't feel anything, but whatever. But he made a comment, I feel cold, and he dies. And so the rest of Jack's crew is none to be seen, they went off with, according to the Pirates Code, you have to, if there's like a straggler pirate behind, they don't stay behind because that'll endanger the rest of the crew. So, that was one of those pirate rules. So they took off with the Black Pearl to Elizabeth's dismay because she wanted their help to help Jack and Will. But Jack gets arrested, is about to be hanged until thanks to Will's quick thinking, he helps. But right after he announces his true feelings for Elizabeth, he rescues Jack, and they use rope to do this cartoonist, fight between the guards. But it's like all like a fruitless endeavor, but it's like, you guys are military officials and you getting, I know it's goofy action and I did enjoy it, but it just can't help but have to comment on the fact that you guys are military trained officers and you getting tripped up by rope. That is embarrassing. But they helped Jack escape. And like I said, I don't like the idea of this whole weird go nowhere, know nothing burger of a flirtatious between Jack and Elizabeth. And it's like Jack has to say, like, it wouldn't work between us, darling. And it's like, y'all had nothing. Hell, Will and Elizabeth barely have anything. Like, could they need like a love story for this? But it's like, oh my god, they could have done it could have afforded a little bit more work in the writing in terms of making this. I'm not sure if it's the writing, maybe it's just the lack of chemistry between Bloom and Keira Knightley. Maybe that has to be it. I don't think it's mainly the writing, but Jack's crew eventually do show up. Picks up Jack. As they sail off, he's now captain of the Black Pearl once again. And, Will and Elizabeth, decide to be betrothed. Norrington decides to give Jack a head start. More a sympathetic thing. It doesn't work out so well with him by the next film, if you recall. And Jack sails off with his crew to the horizon. And that was Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Still pretty good of a film. Despite, certain nitpicks I have about it, I had a good time with this. Like I said, I love pirates. I love the golden age of piracy. It's a good, historical period that I am so interested in. I think it's so fascinating of an historical period. It's right up there for me in terms of medieval Japan and Native American culture and the Old West period. But I think pirates is, second or a good close second or third in terms of my favorite period in history that I find so fascinating. But yeah, it's a fun film, man. It's fun to revisit. Had a good time. But like I said, some point in the future, maybe I'll start covering the rest of the pirate films. Don't know when, but yeah, it was a good time. It was definitely a good time. But let me know what you guys think of the Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, and yeah. And if y'all really want me to, you can leave a comment below and spam it and say, do the rest. I want to hear your thoughts on the rest of the films of the franchise. If we do that, I'd be more than happy to be expedient and get right to them and push all the other stuff I had on the list of reviews to the side until I get through with the other Pirates films. If you guys spam in the comments, if you want me to do that and give my thoughts. But anyway, I will see you guys a little bit later. I have a bit of a discussion video about something that I want to quickly cover. But in any case, I will see you guys later. If not, have a great weekend, and I'll see you all soon. Peace. Yo ho, yo ho. The pirate's life for me. See, the heart is your